Okay, and now to our main program. So to introduce our program is our member, Nicole Klein. And before I bring up Nicole, let me share a few fun facts about Nicole. So after learning a little bit about her, I thought, oh, Nicole, she's like the friend that everybody wants or needs to have. So she enjoys feeding people and hosting parties. Her fridge is always overflowing, and her neighbors are always happily fed with leftovers. Her grandma's chocolate cheesecake is the crowd favorite. She also has a playlist for every mood, event, or activity. She is famous for making mixed tapes for her friends, or mixed CDs, as gifts. And finally, she loves concerts. Once at a Springsteen concert at the Hugh Arena, she was randomly picked to go to the pit, and she actually touched the boss as he crowd surfed above her. Please help me welcome Nicole Klein.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you, President Cindy. We are truly honored to be able to present today to Seattle Rotary 4 about this local treasure. I also wanted to thank our fearless leader for the nearly last 2 decades, Miss Connie Kravis up here in the front. She's been our fierce advocate for this restoration project, and today was one of her last days on campus, so thank you. To get you guys all engaged, I have a few questions for the audience. You need to keep your hand up every time this rings true, maybe go a little higher, because I think you're going to hit all of them. How many in the room are rowers? Yes, yes, yes. Have kayaked, paddled, or pulled in a canoe, or sailed, anything without a motor? How many in the room are Huskies? Keep them up, keep them up. Okay, sports fan. All right. Who in the room is a Navy veteran? Go higher. Keep them up, keep them up. Pilot's license. Been up in a seaplane. Who has read Boys in the Boat? Be honest. Okay. Or has been given a copy and said, read this. Who has watched the PBS documentary, The Boys of 36? Great. Final. Who would here like to see more historic buildings saved? A lover of history. Who loves the Pacific Northwest? Okay, well there you have it. The reason I asked all those questions is because every time you raised your hand would be one reason to care about this building. This project is so special and so complex because it holds so many layers of our history in one place. The video and the discussion today are about how a book has saved this relatively unknown Seattle landmark that has quietly served our community, our country, and our region for over a century. And it's largely due to the worldwide success of the Boys in the Boat that the UW is exploring all options for its $13 million restoration to reactivate it for UW students and the community for generations to come. Very briefly, I wanted to share with you all the other layers of history that we don't have time to fully dive into today, but are just as equally as important and will be reflected in the building's program, exhibits, and design. To dig deeper, we also have an in-depth essay on HistoryLink. Okay, these are gonna go fast. I was looking for Ken to time me, so. The building was built upon Duwamish land and was the site of a natural portage before the Montlake Cut was completed in 1917 and known as Stukwilch in Lushootseed, or carry a canoe, for thousands of years. In 1918, only 1 year after the cut was completed, the 10,000 square foot structure was built by the Navy at the end of World War I as a hangar for seaplanes to train Navy aviators. UW's Portage Bay shoreline was home to over 15,000 servicemen as a naval training station. It is now one of only 2 standing wooden hangars in the US from the Great War. After the war, it was converted into the boathouse for Washington rowing and housed the workshop of master shell builder George Pocock from 1919 until '49. It was the home to not just the 1936 gold medal team we will talk about today, but also to the 1948 Coxed 4 gold medalists and 9 national championship teams, including the first West Coast team to win the national title in 1923. And I think, Chuck Alm, you guys rode from the shed outside, coached by Stan Pocock. So we'll take that too. The team moved out in 1950 when ASUW Shell House was completed, and the building was transformed yet again, becoming the Canoe House, and was the hub for campus water recreation and home to UW's sailing team, including 2 gold medals from the Buchan family. In 1975, it became UW's first building to be placed on the National Register of Historic Places. And for the last 3 decades, it has quietly served as a warehouse for 150 privately owned boats until last year when we started pre-design for its restoration, and it became UW's first Seattle landmark. So that was 100 years of history in 1 minute, close. I shared this timeline with you because I want you to know it is bigger than UW. It is bigger than one section of its impressive timeline. It is the culmination of all of its stories that make it so powerful. So now we're going to watch a really short campaign video and talk with our exciting panelists right after that.
Well, they say there's a lot of virtues to rowing. What are they? Well, now, sometimes it's pretty hard for an oarsman who's never been in a swinging boat to find out what the virtues are. But if he's a dedicated oarsman, this is what he gets. First of all, he should have harmony. And harmony is self-made. Harmony, balance, and rhythm. They are the 3 things that stay with you your whole life. Without them, civilization is out of whack. And that's why an oarsman, when he goes out in life, he can fight it, he can handle life. And that's what he gets from rowing. Harmony, balance, and rhythm. Mark those words.
There aren't many places around that are as old and have been a center for so much life and activity.
This building brings together wood and water. It brings together boat building and rowing and endeavor and fair play and pulling together and community spirit. The building started life off as an seaplane hangar for the Navy. The university then took it over and decided to make it into the Shell House for the Associated Students, University of Washington. And then it served in that function for many decades. One of the things I like most about the building is that in addition to serving as the Shell House, it also housed George Pocock and his boat building shop. And in the back of the building there's a loft, and up in that loft George Pocock was producing these beautiful handcrafted cedar shells that were just state-of-the-art.
1936 story is almost a common story for us in some way. Thousands of people have come here through the University of Washington and the Conover Shell House especially because it touched them in some way. I think it was one of the best gifts that we received. You know, it told the story of rowing. On the other hand, it's a human story. It was talking about rowing, but I think a lot of us in our families can understand what America was like, the United States was like in that era.
I think the story of the Boys in the Boat resonates with so many people because it reminds us of what we're capable of. It reminds us that we're capable of overcoming great adversity. And most of all, it reminds us that our greatest power is when we pull together.
We are forward-thinking here at the University of Washington, and this place exemplifies that. Women rowed here at the University of Washington before women could vote. This is the first women's program to win the Henley Royal Regatta. This place is a trailblazer for women.
I think the Shell House is a living legacy for all of us that have lived in the city. It's just such a beautiful old building, and there's so much that's happened here and needs to happen again.
So that's where we see the old Shell House. So when you ask about the community, like why would the community embrace it? The community is embracing it because it is a part of the history and legacy of a program that the Seattle community has always supported.
This Shell House has the potential to sort of stand as a symbol for the University of Washington and some of the values that these young men had and how those values are perpetuated by the university.
My hope for the future students and current students of the University of Washington would just be that they can come here and reflect and remember their roots. I fully believe that history is power, and knowing how we've gotten to this point today is really a great tool to use moving forward in a learning experience.
I think we could have incredible banquets, gatherings, and we could tell the story of rowing, or maybe use it for tell the story of science or medicine. I'd also like to see it a place of history and memorabilia, and a place to tell the story of our great legacy, but also the legacy of the University of Washington, and maybe Boeing's legacy, and Seattle's legacy. And I think if you tie those three things together, I could see an amazing facility that ties our region, our state, our city, and our university.
So I hope it can be restored and kept alive, because it's far too beautiful and has too many memories caught up in its rafters to let go and float away.
Okay, thank you. So now for our panelists. Our moderator today is Seattle broadcaster, sportswriter, and author Mike Gastineau. First on the panel is our local New York Times best-selling author of The Boys in the Boat, Daniel James Brown. Thank you. And Dan is joined by his neighbor on stage and literally just down the road, Judy Rantz Willman. Judy is the daughter of Joe Rantz, the Olympic oarsman that the book is centered around. Judy is a 1965 graduate of the UW, and she's also a writer, and just this month had a feature article in the UW Alumni Association's Column magazine about her father, the book, and this project. Copies are outside on the table if you don't have one. And finally, we have Melanie Barstow. Melanie is the, Melanie is a recent graduate of UW, and she was a 4-year member of the women's rowing team. And in 2016, while still a student, she launched the Boys of 1936 tours and has since hosted over 3,000 paying people on tours of the Conabear and ASUW Shell Houses. There you go.
Let's hear it for Nicole. And such a wonderful person, but at the top of the list that we all found out today, once touched Bruce Springsteen. Wow. Wow. Very quickly, and then we'll get to the panel. This is my 3rd or 4th time in front of this distinguished group over the time I've lived in Seattle. So I see a lot of old friends and a handful of confirmed enemies, and a lot of you who are still deciding. And so good luck. It's fine either way. We've got room on both sides of the aisle for that. I'm so thrilled to be a small periphery part of this project. I've written a couple of stories about the restoration of the Shell House, and I've talked to Nicole a bunch about it. It's such a worthwhile thing. You know, history can be divided into a lot of things, but really 2 things. There's history, and then there's physical history. History's always there. We can go read about it, we can learn about it, we can put it in our mind, and history is always there. But physical history is not necessarily always there. I'll give you 2 quick examples. The best one, and it's not apples to what we're talking about today, but would be the Seattle Supersonics. We all know the history, we know the team, we know the championship, we know the fun we had for 40 years, but the physical history is now gone. Maybe never to return, who knows? We'd like to think it's coming back, but it's hard to say. And so you think to yourself, God, would I give something to be able to make that not happen if we could get back in a time machine? Physical history is precious. You have to hang on to it. And another example hit me when I was watching that video. Someone long ago said, we need to record George Pocock's voice. Everybody knows about him. Everybody knows what he did. Let's make a recording of his voice. So, in June of 2019, at a luncheon with some distinguished people and some great thinkers and great people in Seattle, you can hear what he sounded like. It's physical history. Had they not done that, the chance to do it would obviously be long gone. So what we'll talk about today is the opportunity that presents itself right now to save an important part of physical history in Seattle that we don't want to see go, and that is fortunately kind of been brought to the front of our thinking by a tremendous book that came out about 6 years ago. So with that, I'll sit down, join the panelists, and we'll let them become the real stars of the show. And Judy, we'll start with you, and we'll start with the book. So many people love the book. I'm sure there's someone somewhere who said, I didn't like this book, but Daniel, you wrote a heck of a book. Everybody loves it. You know, it's the best that something that a work of art can do, in that it's not only great, but it builds a sense of pride in the region. We're all, you know, so excited that story is linked with us. So Judy, tell us a story about kind of how the book came about, and Dan will have you add to it, but how'd this happen? What did you do?
Well, it was serendipity, frankly. I knew there was a story to be told, but as the years passed and the guys got older and began dying off, I also knew we were losing the history. And then a series of things happened to get the story started. First, my daughter discovered boxes of Dad's rowing memorabilia in the attic and processed them into a chronological and narrated scrapbook of his university years. Shortly thereafter, Dad moved in with us, and I started collecting his memories from the past. By the time I had reconstructed the timeline of his younger days and written a synopsis of Dad's childhood and the crew's history, we found out that our neighbor, Dan Brown, had had his first book published, and I showed him the synopsis to see if he, as a published author, thought the story had merit. He loved it. He offered his assistance with research sources. He suggested that I try writing a sample chapter to see if I liked the process. He said if I didn't feel like I wanted to take it on, he wanted to do it as his next book.
Now that's a great story. The serendipity is right. Now, had he been a good neighbor? Had there been a barking dog incident or a tree incident? Or was he having loud parties? Was he somebody you liked anyway?
He was somebody I liked anyway.
That's good. That makes it nice.
He's always been a good guy.
And Dan, I'm not asking you your thoughts on kind of how the book came to be. I know what attracted you to the story because we all read it. It's a tremendous story.
Yeah, well, for me, my commitment to it really began the day I met Judy's dad. When I sat down with Joe Rantz, and he started telling the story in his own words, and I saw in his eyes what it had meant to him, and I saw him tearing up as he talked about it. Really, that was the moment right at the beginning when I was all in. So I walked out of Judy's house that day just completely determined to, not just to write it, but to write the best book I could about it.
Dan, we'll start with you, and then Judy, get your thoughts too. But you mentioned in the video a little bit, Dan, why, you know, anytime you create something like this, you go, okay, let's see what people think. Why did this capture so many people's hearts? Why did it resonate so strongly?
You know, I think the story captures and conveys some sort of basic universal themes beyond rowing. It talks about what home means to us. It talks about what it means to lose your home, about what it means to be treated poorly, to be thrown away like so much trash. And in Joe Rantz's story, we see this young man who had to confront a kind of adversity that might not have been exactly what each of us confronts day to day, but we can all relate to it because all of us have come up against adversity in some form or another. So I really think that for many people, it's about much more than rowing. Rowing's obviously the stage on which this story is told, but I think the reason it's gone beyond the rowing community is that just there's some very basic human themes there about home and loss of home and being treated decently and having to earn your place in the world that appeal to a lot of readers.
Judy, obviously you were prepared to enjoy this book and enjoy the story, and you had lived a certain part of it. Why do you think it connected with so many people, this story about this rowing team up in the northwest corner of the country? Why did it connect so much?
Well, I'm going to overlap a little bit with Dan, but when I was thinking about this, basically first it pulls the reader into the life of Joe Rantz. He's the main character faced with apparently insurmountable odds, banished as a child, abandoned as a teen, struggling with self-doubt, trying to find his way back to that thing that keeps eluding him, home. Second, it is a true story, and because of that, it has inspired many readers to follow their dreams or face their own fears. If Joe could do that, maybe I could do this. But also there's a deeper personal level to the story. It is an unflinching probing of the human condition. It lets the reader stop and remember what things in life are really important. Things like trust and sacrifice and longing for home and love and suffering and honor and grief and joy. For many people, they realize they have just experienced something important, even if they don't quite understand it, because what they've experienced is a look into what we can be like when we are at our best, and it changes them.
Very good. In addition to, of course, my storied athletic career, Melanie, you're our athlete representative up here. When I'm feeling athletic, I go to a sports bar. I'm not sure. When I was in college, I'm not sure I wanted to read a book outside of what I was being assigned. You obviously did with this. Why did this book resonate? I mean, there's some obvious answers to this, but what was it about the book that resonated with you as a student athlete at UW, a member of the crew team? Why did this book connect so well with you?
Yeah, I would say for me it was, this is our history, and I think this is the first time that there was a book written about a team that had gone before me and really paved the way for us to be where we are today. So I saw this book and I read it and I was just like, oh my gosh, that's the boat that's hanging in Conner Shell House that I get to have dinner underneath and hang out with my teammates under. And so it just gave me a much deeper appreciation for even being part of the team. And like Judy mentioned, I really saw it as these boys set a standard that was unparalleled. They were the first team on the West Coast that had ever taken it to the level of being the best in the nation and then the best in the world. And I was like, if they can do it in 1936 with every single challenge imaginable stacked up against them, there's no reason why I, as a current athlete on this team, can't do it again in 2016, 80 years after them.
Now, yeah, very good. Now, we talk about serendipity and the role it plays in this story, and it plays a big role in all of our lives when you think about it. There are little moments and little important things that happen, and who knows why they do. I know from talking to you a year ago, there's a little bit of serendipity. Maybe this never gets to the point of let's save the ASUW Shell House, were it not for the fact that you identified, and talk about how you identified the need that, hey, you know what? We could do tours of this building. Tell that story.
Yeah, I love this story. So basically, Daniel wrote this incredible book, and all of these people immediately started coming into Conner Shell House. And, I would be, again, just doing my homework, eating dinner under the Husky Clipper, because that's where all of the student athletes at UW have their meals during dinner time. And I'd see all these friends come in, and it was so obvious that they were fans of Boys on the Boat. They had no idea where they were going. And they'd kind of wander around, and they'd be like, where's the Husky Clipper? And I'd be like, well, it's that one right there, because it's hanging from the ceiling. And it just kind of drove me nuts, to be fully honest with you, that we didn't have a way to host these people well. And I thought, this is our story, this is our history. I'm the direct legacy of this story and of the boys. And so I kind of watched it for a few years of being like, oh my gosh, we don't have anyone to host these people. And then finally I just sat down with our coaching staff and I said, hey, you guys need a tour and a tour guide. I have no idea how to create one of those, but I'll give it a shot. And they responded with, make it as big as you want it. And I was like, oh no. But I thought it would last for maybe 3 months, but it's been 3 years. I've had the incredible honor of hosting over 3,500 people on tours since, and we are now ranked, the tour, I'm a one-person show, and so we are now ranked number 37 out of the top 200 tours in Seattle. So it's been incredible.
Let's do the hand-raising thing again, because I'm sure this is the case. How many business owners are in here? How many people own a business, a small business? How would you like to have that serendipitous moment? Hey, you know what? I could do boat tours. Boathouse tours. Now, and you just mentioned it's ranked 37th, so I'm assuming I can take a tour this afternoon. How do we all get a tour of the boathouse?
Yeah, great question. Well, we now have enough traffic on the internet to sign up for these tours. So if you Google Boys and Boat Tours, it'll be the first thing that pops up, or go to WashingtonRowing.com, click on History, and then the Boys of 1936 tours. Again, I'm the only person that leads these tours currently. So I will be your guide. So if you want to sign up for a tour, I will be your tour guide.
Can I be a tour guid? Could you?
Yeah, we might need more tour guides.
Is that because my answer to every question would be, well, hang on, let's call Melanie. Let's get her idea. Well, that really, because that is an important part for you to have seen that, and it sounds easy in the rearview mirror. Well, yeah, of course, you saw all these people. You told me once if you found 3 people from Maine just walking around looking lost. But it's not easy, you know, to have that. That was really, it was a brilliant piece of thinking on your part, and it connects, and it started to build, I think, the momentum as to where we are today. Judy, you wrote a story in Columns Magazine, the UW Magazine this June, and you talked about how you first came to visit your father's boathouse. Share that story with everyone, if you would, please.
Sure. Well, this was early on in within the book. And Dan and I were escorting a prospective screenwriter around the university campus to help him kind of get the feel of where scenes and items in the book were. And we told him we could show him the outside of the Shell House, but that it was always locked. And he actually found an open door, so in we went. It was crammed with old canoes and kayaks and a variety of shells, some even old wooden polecocks. But even in its state of disarray, there was an almost mystical aura about it, as though you could, if you just looked hard enough, see the racks of polished wooden shells and the tall young men wandering among them. The hair on the back of my neck was standing up. The history was still there, still alive.
Dan, your book obviously got the ball rolling. Melanie's idea got the ball rolling. What are your thoughts? What makes you excited when you think about this building getting restored?
For me, the building itself is one of the only 2 survivors at this point of the story of the 36 crew. There's the Husky Clipper that Melanie mentioned at Conibear, and then there's the building itself. And I see the building as a storyteller, as an opportunity to tell a story, not just of the 1936 crew, but a series of stories that have shaped Seattle's history. It sits on a spit of land that was a connection between Lake Union and Lake Washington. It was a place where the native peoples used as portage and also a place where they gathered for potlatch. It tells a story of our aviation history when it was used as an airplane hangar, for seaplane hangar. It tells the story of George Pocock and his craft of building boats of wood and water. It tells a story of, the 1936 crew, and more generally, the history of crew at Washington and a program that has built maybe the greatest legacy in the country at this point around rowing, and one that Coach Callahan is carrying forward. So I see the building as a storyteller and as a sort of last opportunity to capture that story and to tell it to a wider audience.
Melanie, one of the goals when this building is restored is to create an extra space for students. It may, who knows what the use will be, but it may be used for special events. It may be used daily for students to go down and just hang out, study, that kind of. Do you think that will happen, and how important is that to weave this building into the day-to-day student life, even for people who are non-rowers?
Absolutely. I would say I do believe it will happen. And I think the reason why I think it's important is because it gives us the space to reflect and remember the generations that have gone before. It's not every college campus that has a World War I seaplane hangar just sitting on its shores. So we have a very, very special opportunity to just bring back the stories that have been untold for the past 100 years, but really can help us remember everyone that's gone before to pave the way for us to be where we are today.
Time moves, and we've got to wrap up here pretty quick, but Dan, let me get from you, and I know this is a question that we could answer until 5 o'clock or even later, a quick update on the movie possibilities for the book. It's a long road, but it sounds like maybe things are getting a little better.
Yeah, well, as you may know, there's been sort of a long, sad start and go history associated with the endeavor to get Boys in the Boat made into a movie. The movie rights went originally to the Weinstein Company.
Sounded good at the time.
Yeah, it sounded good at the time, exactly, you got it right. He had just won several Oscars the day I agreed to sell it to Weinstein. When the Weinstein Company thankfully went out of business, the rights were acquired by a group of Texas investors called Lantern Entertainment. They were then merged with a new entity called Spyglass Media. And so the rights wound up with Spyglass. I talked to my agent last week for an update, and at this point what's happening is Spyglass and MGM are hammering out the details of an agreement by which Lantern and MGM, the big studio, will co-finance and co-distribute the film. So it seems to be moving forward on that basis. I'm excited because, as I say, it has started and stopped several times. I understand they're working on a new script, which from my viewpoint is a good thing. I wasn't very fond of the earlier scripts. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I am beginning to believe again that we will, in our lifetimes, see a movie of The Boys in the Boat.
I know just a little bit about the business, and I'm amazed any movie ever has been made in any time in history because it's so convoluted. Could we do real quick a reading from each person, just their favorite paragraph from the book? I know we're up against time, but Melanie, let's start with you if you've got just a part of the book that resonated with you real quick.
So I love the building. I'm a little bit obsessed. So I read the piece that speaks to that. So it's about Joe and how the Shell House for him was home when so much of his life was in chaos and disarray, that he found tranquility and peace in that space. So it says that he retreated into the life of the Shell House. The boys might still razz him about his low taste in clothes and music, and he really was only comfortable around Roger and Shorty, but at least he felt he had a purpose at the Shell House. The rituals of rowing, the specialized language of the sport, the details of technique that he was struggling to master, the wisdom of the coaches all seemed to Joe to give the world of the Shell House a measure of stability and order that for a long time now the outside world had seemed to lack. The brutal afternoon workouts left him exhausted and sore, but feeling cleansed, as if someone had scrubbed out his soul with a stiff wire brush. The Shell House had become more of a home than the grim confines of his half-built house out in Squim. He liked the way the light poured in through the windows of the enormous sliding doors, the racks of burnished shells on their racks, the hiss of steam in the radiators, the banging of locker doors, the intermingled scents of cedar and varnish and sweat.
Very nice. Judy, your favorite part, this is a big question, your favorite passage in the book?
Yeah, it is a big question. And what I want to read to you is some highly cut segments from the end of the Olympic race, because it's more than I can take time to read. So we'll go with what I have. The crowd noise assaulted them, bewildered them. Across the way, the Italian boat began to surge. So did the German boat, both rolling at over 40 now. Both clawed their way back to even with the American boat. Bobby Mock saw them and screamed into Hume's face, "Higher, higher, give her all you got." Nobody could hear him. Mock knew that somehow the boys had to go even higher, give even more than they were giving, even as he knew they were already giving everything they had. He could see it in their faces, in Joe's contorted grimace, in Don Hume's wide open, astonished eyes. eyes that seemed to stare past him into some unfathomable void. He grabbed the wooden knockers on the tiller lines and began to bang them against the iron-bark knocker boards fastened to either side of the hull. Even if the boys couldn't hear it, maybe they could feel the vibrations. They did, and they immediately understood it for what it was, a signal that they needed to do what was impossible, to go even higher. Somewhere, deep down inside, each of them grasped at shreds of will and strength they did not know they possessed. Their hearts were pumping at nearly 200 beats per minute now. They were utterly beyond exhaustion, beyond what their bodies should be able to endure. The slightest miscue by any one of them would mean catastrophe. It was neck and neck now. The three boats stormed toward the finish line, the lead going back and forth. Mark pounded on the ironwood as hard and as fast as he could, the snap, snap, snap of it firing almost like a machine gun in the stern of the boat. Hugh took the beat higher and higher until the boys hit 44. They had never rowed this high before, never even conceived of it as possible. They edged narrowly ahead, but the Italians began to close again. The Germans were right beside them. Deutschland, 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 thundered in the boys' ears. Bobby Mock sat astride the stern, hunched forward, pounding the words, screaming words no one could hear. The boys took one last mighty stroke and hurled the boat across the line. In the span of a single second, the German, Italian, and American boats all crossed the line.
How about that? Spoiler alert. Dan, do you have a brief passage you could read for us to wrap it up?
Sure. So just before I wrote the passage Judy just read, I went to Berlin. I wanted to see the race course itself. And this is what happened when I was there. I visited the Wassersport Museum in Grunau, where late in the afternoon, Werner Philipp, the director, kindly led me up a set of stairs to the balcony of Haus West. I stood there for a long, quiet minute, near where Hitler stood 75 years before, gazing out over the Langer Sea, seeing it much as he saw it. Down below me, young men were unloading a shell from a truck, singing something softly in German, and preparing for an evening row. Out on the water, a single sculler, his blades glinting, worked his way down one of the lanes towards the large Ziel sign at the end of the course. Closer to me, swallows flew low over the water on silent wings, silhouetted against the declining sun, touching the water from time to time, dimpling the silver surface. Standing there, watching them, it occurred to me that when Hitler watched Joe and the boys fight their way back from the rear of the field to sweep ahead of Italy and Germany 75 years ago, he saw but did not recognize heralds of his doom. He could not have known that one day hundreds of thousands of boys just like them, boys who shared their essential natures, decent and unassuming, not privileged or favored by anything in particular, just loyal, committed, and perseverant, would return to Germany, dressed in olive drab, hunting him down. They are almost all gone now, the legions of young men who saved the world in the years just before I was born. But that afternoon, standing on the balcony of Haus West, I was swept with gratitude for their goodness and their grace, their humility and their honor, their simple civility, and all the things they taught us before they floated across the evening water and finally vanished into the night.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Daniel, Melanie, Judy, and Nicole for a wonderful program. So they will be in the hallway afterwards if you want to talk to them. So thank you very much. So in the few remaining moments I have in my presidency, I'd like to share some thoughts. It's been an honor, a true honor to serve as your president this year. My goals of action and impact were to be inspiring, inclusive, engaging in service, membership, and programs, and to elevate our presence and value in the community as we come into our 110-year milestone. Just as the UW Rollers reminded the country of what can be done when everyone pulls together, this year happened because we all pulled together. And it takes all of us to engage in this club, so thank you. Thank you for your membership and your dedication as leaders and volunteers. And thank you from the bottom of my heart. Just your personal notes, your words of kindness, your texts and beautiful cards. I'm just really grateful for you all. I'd also like to take a few moments to recognize some groups and also individuals. So when I call, would you please stand? So first, all of the committee chairs. If you chaired a committee this year, would you please stand and be recognized? Thank you. Thank you for your leadership. And also, if you participated in some type of committee, like served on a service project, joined a fellowship event, please stand as well. Excellent, thank you. So if you served on the board of the Rotary Foundation, thanks to Jeff Borick and his team, would you please stand, members of the Rotary Foundation? Thank you for helping us make an impact. Now, if you were a Rotary sponsor of our online, Rotary Online, would you please stand up? Because of you, we have a 10-year archive of all of our speakers. Thank you. So I have a few quick shout-outs, special shout-outs. Jeff Pyatt, I know you're here. Thank you very much for the Rotary Foundation efforts. You served with gusto. Jaime Mendez, for your time and energy, enthusiasm with the LinkedIn videos. Dave McFadden, raising the bar on our profile, social media. Tim Bendokas, I'm not sure if you're here, but for our touching Rotary heroes, there you are, Tim, thank you. Tributes. Taylor Schmitzio for her tireless and spirited work with membership. Rotary Rogues, my favorite, taking my requests and sharing the love of music. And then, of course, my son Thor, who has a big heart and wise beyond his years. So thank you all. And then also, Caroline and Mariah, would you please come up? I really appreciate all of your dedication. We're so lucky to have you here at Seattle Ford. Okay, so, and then finally, so Louis Rudd, founders of Giselle's Famous Fried Chicken, spoke earlier this year. And when I attended his anniversary party, I found out that he named his community award the Action and Impact Award. And the Action and Impact theme is our theme for the year. So it's very flattering that he borrowed that name. And he awarded some very amazing community volunteers with that Action and Impact Award. So his talk on leadership, grit and spirit and gratefulness. So I'm returning the favor now by honoring him by borrowing from his playbook. So I'd like to bring up my team of benevolent disruptors, my dream team, who came with me on this journey from the beginning, said yes, believed in the vision, and gave it their all. I mean, just like Jaime said, harmonic synchronization. So please help me bring to the stage, Rob Labosco, VP of Programs, Liz Powell, VP of Membership, Susie Rowe, VP of Service, David Woodward, Board Chair, Jennifer Porto, Board Secretary, Robert Stadler, come on up guys, onto the stage. Robert Stadler, Board Treasurer, and Ken Grant. Ken Grant is not here today. You can see that Rob's playing double duty. On his way over here, he was with his father. Ken's wife's here. Right. And they had a blowout, that's right? So very sad, but so this is the dream team. This is the team that helped me put it all together, so thank you very much. I wanted to acknowledge them. Okay, so I'm going to bring up Mark Wright to say a few words.
Okay, so this is it. It's kind of like being a boat owner. The happiest day of your life is when you buy the boat and then when you sell it. So immediate past president is your soon-to-be title. Cindy, come on up. These flowers are for you. And a couple of other things. Token of my appreciation. Your president, diamond pin. What have you got in there? Please stand by. and your plaque. So I just want to say, your leadership this year has been exactly what we needed. I'm so proud of you for your integrity, your intelligence, your compassion. You have everything that a great leader needs, and we were able to benefit from that for the past year. So thank you so much for everything that you did. Thank you. Okay, past presidents, come on up. Do we still have the gavel somewhere? Oh, it's at the end. Oh, good. So we have our past presidents lined up here. This is one of my favorite parts of our transition. We're going to be handing the gavel. I don't want to say from the beginning of history, but Don is on the end. And we will pass the gavel ceremonially to our new president. So Don, go ahead.